Zara's trembling fingers pressed record as the flight attendant tossed her designer bag into the trash. "Dirty things belong with dirty people," he sneered. Little did Atlantic Airways know. The daughter they humiliated was calling the woman who'd brought down 3 Fortune 500 companies last year, her mother. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed discrimination that made your blood boil. Let's see if justice will be served or if privilege will once again shield the guilty. Zara Washington wasn't just any 17-year-old high school senior. With an IQ of 145 and perfect SAT scores, she had accomplished what many students from her neighborhood in South Chicago could only dream of: acceptance to Yale University on a full academic scholarship. Computer science wasn't just her passion, it was her ticket to a future in Silicon Valley, where she planned to develop algorithms that would change the world. Behind Zara's success stood her mother, Tanya Washington, a name that sent shivers down the spines of corporate executives across America. As one of the most formidable civil rights attorneys in the country, Tanya had built her reputation by systematically dismantling discriminatory practices in major corporations. Her case files read like a history of landmark victories against systemic racism in American business. "Remember, baby girl," Tanya would tell Zara, "your excellence is not just for you. It's for everyone who looks like you and comes after you." The bond between mother and daughter transcended the typical parent-child relationship. When Zara was only 8 years old, her father, Michael Washington, a respected community organizer, had died during a police stop gone wrong. The dashcam footage showed Michael complying with all instructions before an officer claimed to see a weapon. No gun was ever found, and the officers involved were cleared of all wrongdoing. That tragedy had forged an unbreakable alliance between Tanya and Zara. While Tanya fought in courtrooms, Zara fought in classrooms, both determined to change a system that had taken so much from them. "Mom, I can't believe I'm finally going," Zara exclaimed, carefully packing her carry-on for the flight to San Francisco. The National Youth Technology Competition represented the culmination of 3 years of research and coding. Her project on algorithmic bias correction had already attracted attention from several tech companies, and a strong showing at the competition could secure internship offers before she even started college. "I'm so proud of you," Tanya said, handing Zara a sleek Louis Vuitton laptop bag. "This is for your graduation and for this competition. You deserve it." Zara gasped. She recognized the bag. She had seen her mother admiring it months ago, but declaring it too expensive. "Mom, we can't afford this." "We can now," Tanya smiled. "The settlement from the Greenfield case came through. Besides, when you walk into those tech companies, they need to see that you belong in those rooms. This bag isn't just luxury, it's armor." The bag represented everything they had worked for. Every late night Tanya had spent building cases while Zara studied. Every microaggression they had weathered together. Every tear shed and triumph celebrated. Throughout her education, Zara had encountered countless subtle reminders that some people considered her an interloper. There was Mrs. Hensley in 4th grade, who expressed surprise at her advanced reading level. There was the middle school science teacher who suggested she might be more comfortable in standard classes rather than advanced placement. There was the high school counselor who tried steering her toward community college despite her perfect GPA. Each time, Tanya had taught her daughter the same lesson: document everything, stand your ground, and never ever let them see that they've hurt you. So when the TSA agent at O'Hare International Airport pulled Zara aside for a random screening while waving through white passengers, she maintained the poised smile her mother had perfected in countless courtrooms. When the agent rummaged through her carefully packed luggage with suspicious intensity, Zara politely asked if there was a specific concern. When the agent called over a supervisor to verify her ID and boarding pass, something not happening. To any other passengers, Zara calmly recorded the time, badge numbers, and details in the Notes app on her phone. "Is there anything else you need to verify my identity?" Zara asked pleasantly, even as her heart pounded against her ribs. Her Yale acceptance letter sat in her bag, alongside competition confirmation documents and identification. The two TSA agents exchanged glances. "You're free to go," the supervisor finally said, not meeting her eyes. As Zara repacked her belongings, she noticed a white family watching her with undisguised suspicion. The mother pulled her purse closer as Zara walked past. "Just another day in America," Zara whispered to herself, straightening her shoulders, and heading to her gate, her new Louis Vuitton bag a statement of belonging in a world determined to tell her she didn't. "I'm sorry, there seems to be an issue with your seat assignment," the gate agent for Atlantic Airways Flight 1619 said, frowning at her computer screen. "I'm not seeing your reservation." "That's impossible," Zara replied, maintaining her composure as she retrieved her confirmation email. "I have my boarding pass right here, seat 14A. My mother booked this flight 2 months ago." The gate agent, her name tag read Patricia, reluctantly examined Zara's documentation. Behind her, several white passengers were being processed without any verification of their boarding passes. "Well, something's clearly wrong with our system," Patricia finally admitted. "I can put you in 32E for now." Zara recognized the seat number immediately. "That's a middle seat in the last row next to the bathroom," she stated. "My confirmed seat is a window in premium economy." "Take it or miss your flight," Patricia replied, her smile tight and artificial. "We're boarding now." With no choice but to accept, Zara took the new boarding pass and entered the jet bridge. This was her first time flying alone, and already things were going wrong. She sent a quick text to her mother, documenting the incident, then switched her phone to airplane mode. As she stepped onto the aircraft, the first flight attendant she encountered, a tall man with cold blue eyes, glanced at her boarding pass and immediately frowned. "Your carry-on needs to be gate-checked," he said, pointing to her Louis Vuitton bag. "It's too large for the overhead compartment." "I measured it before leaving home," Zara responded calmly. "It meets the airline's published dimensions for carry-on luggage." The flight attendant, his name tag read James Whitfield, seemed taken aback by her articulate response. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Fine," he said curtly. "But if it doesn't fit, it's going underneath." As Zara made her way down the aisle, she noticed multiple passengers with bags larger than hers being helped by other flight attendants to stow their luggage overhead. None of those passengers looked like her. When she reached row 32, Zara found a middle-aged white man already occupying the aisle seat. He wore an expensive suit, and his laptop displayed a corporate logo she recognized from tech industry news. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I need to get to the middle seat." The man, who would later identify himself as Bradley Cooper, looked up with undisguised annoyance. "You're in my row?" he asked, his tone suggesting disbelief. "Yes, seat E," Zara confirmed, showing her boarding pass. Bradley sighed dramatically before standing to let her in, making minimal effort to move aside. As Zara squeezed past, she felt his eyes on her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "Headed to San Francisco for fun?" he asked as she settled in, his tone condescending. "For the National Youth Technology Competition," Zara answered briefly, hoping to end the conversation. Bradley raised his eyebrows. "Really? As what, a participant?" "Yes, I'm presenting my research on algorithmic bias correction in facial recognition systems." His expression shifted from condescension to disbelief, then to something resembling competitive interest. "Oh, I see. Well, I'm Bradley Cooper, CEO of TechNexus. We're actually doing some work in that space." Zara recognized the company name immediately. TechNexus had recently secured a major government contract for surveillance systems despite widespread criticism of their facial recognition software's poor accuracy with non-white faces. "Interesting," Zara replied noncommittally, opening her book to signal an end to the conversation. Bradley seemed irritated by her lack of impressed reaction. Throughout the boarding process, he made several calls, speaking loudly about million-dollar deals and name-dropping Silicon Valley executives. Zara noticed how flight attendants, including James Whitfield, repeatedly stopped to ask if he needed anything before takeoff. When the plane reached cruising altitude, Zara discreetly began documenting the discrepancies in service she observed. White passengers received prompt attention, while the few other passengers of color had to request service multiple times. She noticed James Whitfield consistently serving Bradley first during beverage service, despite Zara being seated in the middle. "Could I please have some water?" Zara asked when James seemed ready to move on without acknowledging her. "In a minute," he replied dismissively, continuing down the aisle. 15 minutes later, Zara had to ask again, this time to a different flight attendant named Rebecca Palmer. Rebecca seemed momentarily uncomfortable, but quickly brought the requested water. Approximately 2 hours into the flight, the aircraft encountered unexpected turbulence. The captain announced that they were flying through a storm system and activated the seatbelt sign. During the bumpy period, several drinks spilled, including Bradley's scotch, which splashed onto his laptop. "Damn it," he exclaimed, frantically dabbing at his computer with napkins. In the commotion that followed, Bradley suddenly turned to Zara with an accusatory stare. "My wallet," he said loudly. "It was right here on the tray table." Zara, who had been holding her book the entire time, looked at him in confusion. "I haven't seen your wallet." "It was right here before the turbulence," Bradley insisted, his voice growing louder. "And now it's gone." Flight attendant James Whitfield appeared immediately. "Is there a problem, sir?" "My wallet's missing," Bradley announced, pointing at Zara. "It was here before the turbulence and she's been sitting right next to me." Zara felt her face flush with humiliation as nearby passengers turned to stare. "I did not take your wallet," she stated firmly. "I've been reading my book." James looked between them, then focused entirely on Bradley. "Sir, are you certain it was on your tray?" "Absolutely," Bradley confirmed. "Check her bag." "I will not allow you to search my property without cause," Zara stated, her legal knowledge from years of dinner conversations with her mother kicking in. "That's a violation of my rights." James's expression hardened. "Ma'am, a passenger has reported a theft. We take these accusations very seriously." "Then you should check the floor first," Zara suggested reasonably. "If it fell during turbulence, it would be under the seats." Bradley scoffed. "She's trying to create a distraction. Check her bag." Without waiting for her consent, James reached for Zara's Louis Vuitton bag in the overhead compartment. "Sir, I need to check under the seats first," Rebecca Palmer interjected, appearing beside James. Rebecca knelt to look under the seats, while passengers around them watched the scene unfold. Zara maintained her composure, though her hands trembled slightly. She knew better than to display anger. A young black woman showing emotion would only reinforce the stereotypes already at play. "Sir," Rebecca said after a moment, "could you check your jacket pockets?" Bradley gave her an irritated look, but patted his suit jacket. His expression changed immediately as he pulled out a sleek leather wallet from his inner pocket. "Oh," he said flatly. "Is that your wallet, sir?" James asked. "Yes," Bradley admitted without apology. "Must have put it there without thinking." Zara expected an apology. From Bradley, from James, from anyone. None came. Instead, James simply nodded and continued down the aisle as if nothing had happened. Rebecca gave Zara an apologetic glance before following him. "Simple mistake," Bradley muttered, returning to his laptop without looking at Zara. The incident left Zara shaken, but she maintained her dignity, remembering her mother's advice. She quietly took out her phone and, under the pretense of checking the time, made brief notes about what had just occurred, including names and exact quotes. "Excuse me," she said to Rebecca when the flight attendant passed by again. "Could I please get the name of your supervisor? I'd like to discuss what happened earlier." Rebecca hesitated. "You'd need to speak with our purser, but he's busy with meal service now. I can give you a customer service card before landing." "Thank you," Zara replied. "And your full name, please, for my records." "Rebecca Palmer," she answered, looking uncomfortable before quickly moving on. From that point forward, the tension in row 32 was palpable. Bradley made a show of keeping his belongings close, while nearby passengers occasionally glanced at Zara with suspicion. What none of them realized was that the daughter of Tanya Washington had been trained since childhood to document discrimination. and Atlantic Airways Flight 1619 was providing plenty to document. Have you ever experienced that moment when patience transforms into power? When humiliation hardens into resolve? As James Whitfield's behavior toward Zara escalated from subtle bias to outright hostility, something inside her shifted. She wasn't just enduring discrimination anymore, she was gathering evidence. Following the wallet incident, James made a point of checking on Bradley Cooper frequently, each time deliberately ignoring Zara. When he distributed headphones to passengers, he skipped her entirely. When he handed out customs forms for international passengers, he dropped Zara's on her tray without making eye contact, while pleasantly explaining the forms to white travelers. Rebecca Palmer noticed these discrepancies. Zara caught her watching James with a troubled expression several times, but the younger flight attendant never intervened directly. Once, when James was in the galley, Rebecca quietly offered Zara a premium snack not usually served in economy. "I'm sorry," she whispered, before quickly moving on. Bradley Cooper, emboldened by James's obvious bias, continued his inappropriate behavior. When Zara stood to use the restroom, he made no effort to move his legs, forcing her to awkwardly climb over him. As she did, he smirked and whispered, "Careful now." Upon returning to her seat after using the bathroom, Zara overheard Bradley talking to the passenger across the aisle, an older white man who had been watching the earlier wallet drama with obvious suspicion. "These affirmative action kids," Bradley was saying quietly. "They get into these competitions in schools without earning it, then wonder why people don't respect them." The other passenger nodded sympathetically. "It's reverse discrimination, if you ask me." Zara slipped past them without comment, her face a careful mask hiding the hurt and anger beneath. She took out her phone again, documenting the exchange with precise timestamps. 3 hours into the flight, the cabin had become increasingly uncomfortable for Zara. A group of passengers in the rows around her had formed a strange alliance, exchanging glances whenever she moved and clutching their belongings tighter. Bradley had successfully created a bubble of suspicion around her, and James Whitfield was reinforcing it with every interaction. "Excuse me," Zara said, catching Rebecca's attention as she passed. "Are there any other available seats? This row is becoming uncomfortable." Rebecca checked her tablet. "There are several open seats in rows 15 through 18, but I'd need to check with James. He's managing the cabin assignments." When Rebecca consulted with James, Zara could see their conversation becoming tense. James repeatedly shook his head, while Rebecca gestured toward the front of the plane. Finally, Rebecca returned with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, those seats are being held for potential crew rest. You'll need to remain in your assigned seat." 20 minutes later, Zara watched in disbelief as James escorted a white woman from economy to one of those supposedly reserved seats. The bathroom situation became another point of contention. When Zara attempted to use the rear lavatory a second time, she found James blocking her path. "You were just in there 40 minutes ago," he said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "There are other people waiting." "There's no line," Zara pointed out calmly, gesturing to the empty aisle. "Policy limits lavatory usage during peak times," James replied, making up a rule on the spot. "Please return to your seat." 10 minutes later, Zara watched as a white teenage girl entered the same bathroom and remained there for nearly 15 minutes without any comment from James. The final straw came during the pre-landing preparation. Zara had placed her Louis Vuitton bag in the overhead bin during takeoff, as required. As passengers prepared for landing, she stood to retrieve it, planning to place it under the seat in front of her. "That needs to stay stowed until we're at the gate," James said sharply as she reached for her bag. "I'm moving it under the seat for landing, as permitted by FAA regulations," Zara replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "That bag won't fit under the seat," James insisted, despite clear evidence to the contrary. "It needs to remain in the overhead compartment." "Other passengers have larger bags under their seats," Zara pointed out, nodding toward several examples nearby. James's face hardened. "Are you questioning my authority on this aircraft?" The confrontation had drawn attention from surrounding passengers. Bradley Cooper was watching with barely concealed satisfaction, while Rebecca hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to contradict her colleague. I'm simply pointing out inconsistent application of rules, Zara stated. My bag meets all size requirements for under-seat storage. James's eyes narrowed. With deliberate slowness, he reached past Zara and took her Louis Vuitton bag from the overhead bin. For a moment, she thought he was relenting and would allow her to store it properly. Instead, he held the designer bag between two fingers as if it were contaminated. This bag presents a safety hazard, he announced loudly. It appears to be damaged and potentially unsanitary. Zara's breath caught in her throat. The bag was pristine. It had been a gift just days before. There's nothing wrong with my bag, she protested. Without breaking eye contact with her, James dropped the Louis Vuitton bag into the trash cart he had been using to collect garbage before landing. Dirty things belong with dirty people, he said, just loudly enough for those in the immediate vicinity to hear. The moment crystallized into perfect clarity for Zara. This wasn't just rudeness or poor service. This was deliberate humiliation, based on the color of her skin. This was a man using his temporary authority to put her in her place. This was exactly what her mother had taught her to recognize and document. With remarkably steady hands, Zara took out her phone and began recording. I'd like to confirm what just happened, she said clearly. You've just thrown my personal property, a gift from my mother, into the trash while making a derogatory comment. Could you please state your name and employee ID for my records? James's expression flickered between shock and anger. He hadn't expected this poised, articulate response from someone he'd been treating as inferior for the entire flight. Recording is not permitted. Federal regulations prohibit interference with aircraft operations and crew instructions, Zara recited calmly. They do not prohibit documenting discrimination and property damage by airline staff. Your name and ID, please? Rebecca Palmer stepped forward. James, I think we should... Stay out of this, Rebecca, James snapped. Turning back to Zara, he said, You can file a complaint with customer service like everyone else. Now sit down and prepare for landing. I'll retrieve my property first, Zara said, reaching for her bag in the trash cart. James moved the cart. Way, that's airline property now. The standoff might have escalated further if not for the captain's announcement that they were beginning their final descent. James smirked triumphantly and pushed the cart toward the galley, taking Zara's bag with it. As she returned to her seat, shaking with a combination of anger and adrenaline, Bradley Cooper leaned over. You people always have to make a scene, don't you? Zara didn't respond. Instead, she sent a text that would change everything. Mom, I need you to meet me at the gate in San Francisco. Bring your business cards. Atlantic Airways just gave you your next class action lawsuit. Do you think Zara was right to record the incident, or should she have handled it differently? Comment number 1, if you believe she showed remarkable restraint in a situation designed to provoke her. Comment number 2, if you think she should have been more aggressive in defending her property. Either way, don't forget to like and subscribe to see what happens when Zara Washington discovers how Atlantic Airways treated her daughter. What legal strategies will this powerhouse attorney employ to hold the airline accountable? Let's continue and find out. The aircraft doors opened at San Francisco International Airport, but for Zara Washington, the ordeal was far from over. As passengers stood to disembark, James Whitfield appeared at her row. Ma'am, I'll need you to remain seated until all other passengers have deplaned, he announced with thinly veiled satisfaction. On what grounds? Zara asked calmly, continuing to record with her phone. Security concerns, James replied vaguely. Airport police have been notified of a disruptive passenger. Bradley Cooper smirked as he collected his belongings. Some people just can't behave in public, he commented loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. With remarkable composure for a 17-year-old who had just been publicly humiliated, Zara remained in her seat while watching the last passengers file past. Some avoided eye contact entirely. Others stared with undisguised curiosity. A few gave sympathetic glances, but hurried along when James glared at them. Rebecca Palmer lingered, near the galley, clearly conflicted. As the final passengers exited, she approached Zara's row. Your bag, she whispered, sliding the Louis Vuitton tote from behind a service cart. I pulled it out of the trash. I'm so sorry about all this." Before Zara could thank her, James returned with 2 airport security officers. "This is the passenger," he said. She became confrontational during landing procedures, refused to follow crew instructions, and attempted to record staff without consent. The security officers, both white men in their 40s, turned to Zara with immediate suspicion. "Ma'am, we need to see some identification," one stated firmly. "May I ask what specific regulation I violated?" Zara inquired, retrieving her ID from her newly rescued bag. The officers exchanged glances, clearly not expecting such a measured, articulate response from someone James had characterized as disruptive. "We received a report of non-compliance with crew instructions," the second officer explained, his tone slightly less aggressive. "I have video documentation of the actual events," Zara offered, holding up her phone, "including this flight attendant throwing my personal property in the trash while making discriminatory comments." James's face flushed. "That's a complete fabrication." "Zara!" The commanding voice cut through the tension like a thunderclap. Standing in the jet bridge doorway was Tanya Washington, 5'6" of impeccably dressed legal fury. Her Armani suit and pearl necklace screamed corporate attorney, but her eyes burned with maternal protection. "Mom," Zara said, relief flooding her voice. Tanya Washington stepped onto the aircraft, professional smile firmly in place despite the rage evident in her eyes. "Gentlemen, I'm Tanya Washington, attorney at law. I understand you're detaining my minor daughter based on allegations from this flight attendant?" The security officers straightened instinctively. Tanya Washington's reputation in legal circles extended far beyond Chicago. "Ma'am, we're responding to a report of a disruptive passenger," the first officer explained. "I see." Tanya's voice was ice. "And what specific disruption occurred? Because my daughter has been documenting her entire flight experience, including what appears to be a pattern of discriminatory treatment, culminating in the destruction of personal property." James paled slightly but maintained his position. Ms. Washington was refusing to comply with safety instructions and creating a hostile environment. "That's fascinating," Tanya replied, "especially since I've just spoken with 3 passengers who deplaned before you detained my daughter. They described witnessing discriminatory treatment throughout the flight, including you throwing her property in the trash while making a racially charged comment." The security officers glanced at each other again, clearly realizing they had walked into a situation far more complex than a simple case of passenger non-compliance. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in the terminal," the second officer suggested, "with airline representatives present." "Absolutely," Tanya agreed. "I insist on it, and I'll need the contact information for both of you, as well as all Atlantic Airways staff involved in today's incident." As they exited the aircraft, Rebecca Palmer quietly approached Tanya. "Ms. Washington, I saw everything. If you need a statement from another crew member, I can provide one." Tanya's expression softened momentarily. "Thank you, Ms. Palmer. I'll be in touch." In the terminal, the situation quickly escalated beyond James Whitfield's control. Tanya Washington was not just any angry parent. She was a legal strategist who had taken down corporations much larger than Atlantic Airways. Within 30 minutes, she had 1. Obtained contact information for all relevant parties. 2. Filed a formal discrimination complaint with airline management. 3. Secured statements from 3 witnesses who had observed the entire incident. 4. Documented the condition of Zara's Louis Vuitton bag, which now bore stains from its time in the trash cart. 5. Initiated contact with her legal team back in Chicago. The Atlantic Airways customer service manager who arrived on the scene, Albert Richardson, attempted to defuse the situation with corporate platitudes. "Ms. Washington, we deeply regret any misunderstanding that may have occurred during your daughter's flight," he began, his rehearsed smile never reaching his eyes. "Mr. Richardson," Tanya interrupted, "let me be abundantly clear. What happened today was not a misunderstanding. It was a documented case of racial discrimination, property damage, and public humiliation of a minor. My daughter was targeted by your employee, Mr. Whitfield, from the moment she boarded your aircraft. Those are serious allegations. They are facts, supported by video evidence and witness testimony, Tanya corrected. Now you have two options. Option 1. Atlantic Airways can immediately acknowledge the incident, issue a public apology, compensate my daughter for damages including emotional distress, and implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff. Option 2. I file a civil rights lawsuit that will make the headlines of every major news outlet by tomorrow morning. Richardson's smile faltered. I'll need to consult with our legal department. You do that, Tanya agreed. You have 24 hours. As Richardson retreated to make frantic phone calls, Zara finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Mom, it was awful, she whispered. They made me feel like I didn't belong there, like I was some kind of criminal. Tanya embraced her daughter, fierce protectiveness evident in every line of her body. You did everything right, baby. You kept your composure, you documented everything, and you stood your ground. I am so proud of you. Zara took a shaky breath. My competition starts tomorrow. I don't know if I can focus after all this. You can and you will, Tanya assured her. Because the best response to people who try to diminish you is to shine so brightly they can't ignore you. We'll deal with Atlantic Airways, but first, you're going to that competition and showing them exactly why you belong at Yale. What neither of them realized yet was that the incident was already gaining traction online. Another passenger had recorded portions of the confrontation and posted the video to social media with the caption, Atlantic Airways flight attendant throws black. Teenager's designer bag in trash while calling her dirty. Her mother shows up and goes full mama bear. Within hours, the video had been viewed 50,000 times. Atlantic Airways' initial response came in the form of a terse statement posted to their social media accounts. Atlantic Airways is aware of a video circulating online regarding interaction between our crew and a passenger on Flight 1619. We take all customer concerns seriously and are investigating the matter. Atlantic Airways is committed to providing a safe, comfortable experience for all passengers and does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. The statement only fueled the growing controversy, with comments flooding in. Notice they didn't deny what happened? Typical corporate non-apology. I'm canceling my Atlantic flight next week, not spending money with racists. That flight attendant should be fired. Meanwhile, at the San Francisco Marriott where Zara and Tanya were staying, the teenager was trying to refocus on her competition preparation when her phone began buzzing with notifications. Friends from Chicago had identified her in the viral video and were messaging their support. Simultaneously, Tanya received a call from a contact at the Chicago Tribune who wanted a statement about the incident. The reporter informed her that they had identified Bradley Cooper as the CEO of TechNexus, a company with major government contracts for security software, including facial recognition systems being deployed in airports nationwide. The connection was not lost on Tanya. Her daughter, who was developing algorithms to correct racial bias in facial recognition, had been racially profiled by a flight attendant while sitting next to the CEO of a company selling potentially biased facial recognition technology to the government. This isn't just about one bad flight attendant, Tanya realized. This is about a system that keeps perpetuating the same discriminatory patterns across industries. As Tanya began formulating their legal strategy, Zara received an unexpected message from an unknown number. This is Rebecca Palmer. I saved your number from the passenger manifest. I'm so sorry about what happened today. James has a history of similar incidents that the airline has covered up. I've documented several cases but been afraid to come forward. If you're pursuing this legally, I want to help. What he did to you was wrong, and it wasn't the first time. The message confirmed what Tanya and Zara had suspected. James Whitfield's behavior wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern that Atlantic Airways had systematically ignored or concealed. By evening, Atlantic Airways' crisis management team was in full damage control mode. Their updated statement attempted to distance the company from James Whitfield's actions. Following our investigation into the incident on Flight 1619, Atlantic Airways has placed the involved employee on administrative leave, pending a thorough review. The behavior depicted does not reflect our company values or training protocols. We have reached out to the affected passenger and her family to address their concerns directly. The statement was technically true. They had reached out by having their legal department contact Tanya with a settlement offer that included a strict non-disclosure agreement. Tanya had declined it without hesitation. "They're not offering accountability," she explained to Zara as they prepared for bed. "They're offering hush money, and that's not why we do this work." Zara nodded, understanding perfectly. Her mother had built her career on refusing to let powerful entities buy their way out of responsibility. "Get some rest, baby," Tanya said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Tomorrow you show the world your brilliant mind, and the day after, that we start making Atlantic Airways wish they'd never heard the name Washington." As Zara drifted off to sleep, her phone lit up with one final notification, a social media alert that the video of her confrontation with James Whitfield had just passed 1 million views. The morning sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains failed to dispel the heaviness in Zara's chest. Despite her mother's encouragement, the events aboard Flight 1619 had left a mark deeper than she wanted to admit. As she prepared for the first day of the National Youth Technology Competition, her hands trembled slightly while applying mascara. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection, channeling her mother's unshakable confidence. The competition venue, San Francisco's prestigious innovation center, should have filled Zara with excitement. Instead, as she approached the registration desk, she felt a familiar tightness in her stomach, the sensation of being scrutinized, of needing to prove she belonged. "Zara Washington," she said to the volunteer manning the check-in table. Fury, young man's eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Oh, you're… I saw the video. That was awful." Zara maintained her composed expression. "I'm here for the competition. Table assignment?" "Right, of course." He handed her a badge and information packet. "You're at table 14 in the main exhibition hall. Good luck." As Zara made her way through the crowd of young innovators, she noticed the whispers and glances following her. The viral video had transformed her from anonymous competitor to reluctant celebrity overnight. "Hey, aren't you the girl from that flight with the racist flight attendant?" A well-meaning competitor approached her. "That was messed up. I shared it with everyone I know." "Thank you," Zara replied politely, eager to focus on the competition rather than the incident. At table 14, she began setting up her project display. Her research on algorithmic bias correction in facial recognition was the culmination of 3 years of work. The project had started after her father's death, when she'd discovered the police body cam footage often failed to capture clear images of black faces due to algorithmic limitations in the camera's software. "Participants, welcome to the opening day of the National Youth Technology Competition," announced Dr. Lawrence Chen, the competition director, from a podium at the center of the hall. "Today, you'll set up your displays and participate in preliminary judging rounds. Tomorrow will feature public viewing and finalist selections, with awards presented on day 3. As Zara arranged her presentation materials, she noticed a group of competition organizers huddled together, occasionally glancing in her direction. Eventually, a woman in a navy blazer approached her table. "Ms. Washington, I'm Veronica Mills, competition coordinator. Could we speak privately for a moment?" In a small conference room adjacent to the exhibition hall, Veronica's professional demeanor barely masked her discomfort. "Ms. Washington, we've become aware of your situation with Atlantic Airways. While we sympathize with your experience, we're concerned about the attention it's drawing to the competition." Zara maintained her mother's courtroom-perfected neutral expression. "I'm not sure I understand your concern, Ms. Mills." Veronica shifted in her seat. The competition values focus on scientific achievement rather than outside controversies. Several of our sponsors have expressed concern about, potential disruption. "I'm here to present my research," Zara stated calmly. "The incident on the flight is a separate matter." "Yes, well," Veronica cleared her throat. "One of our major sponsors this year is actually Atlantic Airways. Their corporate innovation team judges our aviation technology category." The connection suddenly became clear. Are you asking me to withdraw my discrimination complaint to avoid making your sponsor uncomfortable? Not at all, Veronica backpedaled quickly. We would never. It's just that your position in the competition could be compromised by external factors. Perhaps deferring your complaint until after the competition would be in everyone's best interest. Zara's academic future and her mother's fight for justice were being positioned as mutually exclusive. The implied threat was clear. Pursue the complaint and risk your standing in the competition. Thank you for your concern, Zara replied, rising from her chair. I'll be returning to my table now. I have a presentation to prepare. Back in the exhibition hall, Zara tried to refocus on her project, but Veronica's veiled warning lingered. As she arranged her display, she overheard snippets of conversation from nearby competitors. Probably just playing the race card for attention. Heard she's only here because of diversity quotas. Yale acceptance probably works the same way. The comment stung, but Zara had encountered similar skepticism throughout her academic career. What troubled her more was discovering the connection between the competition and Atlantic Airways. If the airline sponsored the event, how many other corporate ties existed beneath the surface? During lunch break, Zara found herself sitting alone until a young Indian-American woman approached with her tray. Mind if I join you? I'm Priya Patel, Table 23, Quantum Computing Applications. Zara Washington, Algorithmic Bias Correction. Priya nodded. I know who you are. That video was infuriating. My parents immigrated from Mumbai, and my moms had similar experiences, though not quite that blatant. For the first time since arriving, Zara felt her shoulders relax slightly. It helps to hear that. Some people are acting like I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Those people have never had their humanity questioned for existing in the wrong space, Priya replied matter-of-factly. Your project sounds fascinating, by the way, especially given what happened. As they discussed their research, Zara gradually revealed the details of her project. Her algorithm addressed a fundamental flaw in current facial recognition systems. They were primarily trained on datasets dominated by white faces, leading to significantly higher error rates when identifying people of color. The implications are enormous, Zara explained, animation returning to her voice. From airport security to police body cams, these systems are making consequential decisions based on flawed data. That's exactly why it matters, Priya agreed, and why some people might feel threatened by your work. As the afternoon progressed, preliminary judging began. Judges moved from table to table, evaluating projects and questioning participants. When the judges finally reached Zara's station, she noticed one man hanging back from the group, studying her with unusual intensity. Dr. Lawrence Chen introduced the judges. Ms. Washington, this is our evaluation team for the AI and machine learning category. Dr. Rodriguez from Stanford, Dr. Hamilton from MIT, and Mr. Peterson from our sponsor panel. The man who had been watching her stepped forward. Daniel Peterson, Vice President of Technology at TechNexus. Zara froze. TechNexus, Bradley Cooper's company. The same Bradley Cooper who had sat beside her on the flight, who had falsely accused her of theft, who had whispered derogatory comments about affirmative action kids. Your project addresses algorithmic bias in facial recognition, Mr. Peterson stated, rather than asked. Quite a controversial claim that existing systems are fundamentally flawed. It's not a claim, it's a documented statistical reality, Zara responded, recovering her composure. Current systems show error rates up to 34% higher for darker-skinned individuals than for lighter-skinned subjects. Some would argue that's due to environmental factors rather than algorithmic design, Peterson countered. Lighting conditions, photographic quality. My research controls for those variables, Zara explained, bringing up her data visualizations. Even under identical conditions, the disparity persists, unless specifically corrected for in the training datasets. The academic judges seemed impressed by her methodology, but Peterson's expression remained skeptical. As the judges moved to the next table, Zara noticed Peterson lingering to make a phone call. That evening, back at the hotel, Zara recounted the day's events to her mother, who who had spent the day meeting with local attorneys specializing in discrimination cases. "TechNexus is judging my category," Zara explained. "Bradley Cooper's company." "It can't be coincidence." Tanya's expression darkened. "It's not. I've been doing some digging. Atlantic Airways' corporate innovation program is funded by a consortium that includes TechNexus. They're currently testing Bradley's facial recognition system at 3 major airports. The same system my research proves is biased against people who look like me," Zara concluded. "No wonder he was so hostile on the flight." "There's more," Tanya continued. "The competition's primary sponsor is the Westfield Foundation, which shares 3 board members with Atlantic Airways." The connections were becoming clear. This wasn't just about one discriminatory flight attendant or one prejudiced CEO. Zara had unknowingly stepped into a web of corporate interests, all potentially threatened by her research. As if confirming their suspicions, Zara's phone chimed with a notification. An anonymous email had arrived. "Withdraw your project or expect to be disqualified on technical grounds. Your Yale scholarship depends on your competition record." The threat was explicit now. Someone wanted to silence both her discrimination complaint and her research findings. "They're scared," Tanya observed after reading the email. "You've hit a nerve." "What should I do?" Zara asked, the weight of the situation pressing down on her 17-year-old shoulders. "That depends," Tanya replied, the strategist in her emerging. "What matters most to you right now?" Zara considered the question. Her Yale scholarship, her technology project, justice for the discrimination she'd faced, all were important. But something more fundamental was at stake. "Truth," she finally answered. "If I back down now, I'm accepting their version of reality, one where I should be grateful for the scraps from their table and silent about how I'm treated." Tanya smiled with fierce pride. "Then we fight on all fronts. You present your project with everything you've got, and we pursue the discrimination case without compromise." That night, as Zara finalized her presentation, a gentle knock interrupted her concentration. Opening the hotel room door, she found an unexpected visitor, Dr. Eliza Chen, one of the academic judges from the competition and sister of the competition director. "Ms. Washington, I apologize for the intrusion," Dr. Chen said quietly. "I needed to speak with you privately." Once inside, Dr. Chen revealed her purpose. "I overheard Daniel Peterson's conversation after judging your project. He was instructing someone to find technical disqualifications for your entry. This violates every ethical standard of the competition." "Why are you telling me this?" Zara asked cautiously. "Because 15 years ago I was in your position," Dr. Chen explained. "My research on gender bias in medical algorithms threatened similar interests. They succeeded in silencing me then. I won't let it happen to another promising scientist." With Dr. Chen's warning and support, Zara modified her strategy for the next day's presentation. Meanwhile, Tanya Washington prepared for battle on multiple fronts, against Atlantic Airways, against TechNexus, and against a system designed to protect corporate interests at the expense of truth and justice. As Zara finally drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed with another notification. TechNexus representatives had been added as surprise speakers for tomorrow's competition event. The company would be demonstrating their new facial recognition system, the very technology her research proved was fundamentally flawed. The battlefield was being prepared, and Zara Washington was now fighting for much more than a competition win. She was fighting for her future, for scientific integrity, and for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. When the sun rose over San Francisco Bay, Atlantic Airways' public relations machine was already in overdrive. Overnight, the airline had transformed from silent observer to aggressive defender, launching a coordinated campaign to rewrite the narrative around Flight 1619. Breaking: multiple passengers contradict viral video claims about Atlantic Airways incident, read the headline on Air Travel Today, an industry publication with known ties to several major airlines. The article featured carefully selected quotes from supposed passengers who described Zara as confrontational and disruptive throughout the flight. Zara Washington read the article with narrowed eyes as she sipped her morning coffee. Fabricated. Testimonials, she murmured. Classic corporate playbook. Zara glanced up from her competition notes. How can they just lie like that? Because they're counting on two things, Tanya explained. First, that we'll be intimidated by their resources. Second, that the public has a short attention span. They're trying to create reasonable doubt before we can build our case. The disinformation campaign wasn't limited to friendly media outlets. As Zara scrolled through social media before heading to day 2 of the competition, she discovered thousands of new comments on the viral video, many suspiciously similar in wording and posted by accounts with minimal history. Bot accounts, she realized. They're flooding the conversation to dilute support. But the most troubling development awaited them at the competition venue. When they arrived at the Innovation Center, security guards approached them immediately. Ms. Washington? The larger guard addressed Zara. We need to verify your credentials. There's been a security flag on your registration. Tanya stepped forward. On what grounds? Ma'am, I'm just following instructions, the guard replied uncomfortably. Competition management has requested additional verification. After 20 minutes of bureaucratic obstacles clearly designed to delay her setup time, Zara finally reached her project table, only to find it had been relocated from its prime position to a remote corner near the emergency exit. They're trying to marginalize you, Priya Patel observed, stopping by Zara's new location, both literally and figuratively. Throughout the morning, Zara noticed competition staff watching her with unusual attention. When she stepped away to use the restroom, she returned to find someone had been examining her display materials. Gathering intel, Tanya surmised when Zara texted her about the situation. Stay alert but focused. I'm handling things on my end. Tanya's handling things involved meeting with Rebecca Palmer, the flight attendant who had witnessed James Whitfield's actions on Flight 1619. They met at a small cafe 3 blocks from the competition venue, far from prying eyes. I could lose my job for being here, Rebecca said nervously, clutching her coffee cup. But what happened to your daughter was wrong, and it wasn't an isolated incident. Over the next hour, Rebecca revealed a disturbing pattern. James Whitfield had a history of discriminatory behavior toward passengers of color, particularly those in premium cabins or those who appeared to be of high socioeconomic status. He has this belief that certain passengers don't deserve premium service, Rebecca explained. He calls it maintaining standards, but it's really about keeping people in what he considers their proper place. And Atlantic Airways knows about this? Tanya pressed. Rebecca nodded grimly. There have been at least 7 formal complaints that I know of. Each time, management conducts a superficial investigation, concludes there was a misunderstanding, and moves on. Sometimes they offer miles or vouchers to quiet the complainant. What happens to the documentation of these complaints? Tanya asked, attorney instincts flaring. That's the thing, Rebecca replied, lowering her voice. 2 months ago, I overheard HR discussing a digital cleanup of employee files before a regulatory review. The next day, several complaint records were missing from our internal system. This information was gold to Tanya, evidence of a systemic cover-up rather than an isolated incident. But before she could probe further, Rebecca's phone buzzed with an urgent message. I have to go, she said, suddenly pale. They know I called in sick today. Someone from crew scheduling just texted asking if I'm feeling better because they saw me in a cafe near Union Square. They're watching you, Tanya realized, which means they see you as a threat. Rebecca stood to leave, then hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. After your daughter's video went viral, James received a personal call from someone high up in the company. Not his direct supervisor, but someone from corporate headquarters. Whatever they discussed, he came back looking confident, telling people, it's being handled at the highest levels. Back at the competition, Zara was facing her own battle against corporate interference. During the public viewing session, her presentation on algorithmic bias was drawing significant attention, both from genuinely interested attendees and from suspicious visitors who asked pointed questions clearly designed to undermine her methodology. "Your sample size seems limited," challenged one man who failed to identify his affiliation despite Zara's direct question. "How can you claim systematic bias from such restricted data?" "My initial research used publicly available datasets containing over 400,000 facial recognition samples," Zara responded calmly. "The live demonstration uses a smaller subset for practical purposes, but the statistical analysis covers the full dataset." The man seemed frustrated by her composed, thorough answer. As he walked away, Zara noticed him speaking into a phone, glancing back at her. Midway through the afternoon, the competition director announced a special presentation in the main auditorium. TechNexus will be demonstrating their next-generation facial recognition system, recently adopted by 3 major international airports. The timing was not coincidental. As attendees filed toward the auditorium, Zara made a crucial decision. Instead of joining the audience, she used the opportunity to conduct an additional test of her bias correction algorithm, using the competition's diverse attendees as subjects. When Daniel Peterson from TechNexus took the stage in the auditorium, he was accompanied by a familiar face. Bradley Cooper, CEO and Zara's antagonistic seatmate from Flight 1619. Neither man knew that while they were showcasing their technology's supposed accuracy, Zara was gathering compelling evidence of its failures just outside the auditorium doors. "Our facial recognition system achieves 99.7% accuracy in controlled testing environments," Bradley boasted to the audience. What he failed to mention, and what Zara's real-time testing was proving, was that this accuracy rate applied primarily to white male faces. For women of color, the error rate jumped to nearly 35%. While the corporate presentation continued, Zara Washington was making moves of her own. After her meeting with Rebecca Palmer, she had contacted 3 other flight attendants who had worked with James Whitfield. 2 declined to speak, citing fear of retaliation. But the third, James's ex-girlfriend Alicia Rodriguez, agreed to meet. "James isn't just a random racist," Alicia explained during their meeting. "He's been coached on how to handle certain passengers. Atlantic Airways has an unofficial policy they call passenger comfort management. It sounds innocent, but in practice, it means catering to the comfort of wealthy white passengers, even at the expense of others." "Are you saying the airline explicitly instructs staff to discriminate?" Tanya asked, recording the conversation with Alicia's permission. "Not in writing," Alicia clarified. "But during training, they use coded language like maintaining cabin harmony and addressing passenger concerns proactively. They show scenarios where flight attendants resolve tensions by moving or downgrading passengers of color when white passengers express discomfort. And they document this training?" "There are videos," Alicia confirmed, "training modules that never appear in the official curriculum but are shown during staff orientation. James once boasted that he received a performance bonus for exemplary passenger comfort management after preventing a black executive from being upgraded to first class, despite his status eligibility." The pieces were coming together. This wasn't just about James Whitfield or even Atlantic Airways. It was about an entire system designed to preserve traditional hierarchies while maintaining plausible deniability. As the day progressed, the corporate counterattack intensified. Atlantic Airways released personnel records allegedly showing that James Whitfield had received exemplary reviews from passengers of all backgrounds. Records that Rebecca Palmer had specifically mentioned were digitally altered during the cleanup. Simultaneously, an anonymous source provided several news outlets with a supposed disciplinary record for Zara from her high school, claiming she had a history of making unfounded discrimination claims. The document was a complete fabrication. Zara's actual school record was spotless, but the damage was being done in the court of public opinion. Most disturbingly, Rebecca Palmer was abruptly terminated from Atlantic Airways for violation of company confidentiality policies. The message was clear. Anyone who supported Zara's version of events would face consequences. The coordinated assault on Zara's credibility extended to her competition standing as well. Shortly before the day's judging concluded, Veronica Mills approached her with a grave expression. "Ms. Washington, there's been a complaint about your project's methodology." The ethics committee is reviewing whether your data collection violated privacy guidelines. My research uses publicly available data sets and anonymous volunteer testing, Zara countered, all following standard research protocols. Nevertheless, Veronica continued, the committee has placed your project under review. You may continue in the competition, but you'll be ineligible for awards pending resolution. The timing, immediately, after TechNexus's presentation, was too perfect to be coincidence. Zara was being systematically pushed out, her voice silenced, her research delegitimized. That evening, as Zara and Tanya compared notes in their hotel room, the full scope of the corporate conspiracy became clear. Atlantic Airways, TechNexus, and possibly the competition organization itself were all working together to neutralize both Zara's discrimination claim and her research findings. They're scared, Tanya observed. All this effort means you've hit something important. Zara nodded, scrolling through social media where a hashtag #RiWithStandWithZara was battling against the corporate-sponsored negative narratives. But they have so many resources. How do we fight this? By being smarter, Tanya replied. They're playing a traditional corporate defense game. Deny, discredit, delay. But they've made a crucial mistake. What's that? They've underestimated how many people are tired of these tactics, Tanya explained. And they've given us the perfect opportunity to expose not just one incident, but an entire system. As they strategized late into the night, Zara's phone chimed with an encrypted message from Dr. Eliza Chen. Competition judges meeting leaked. TechNexus representatives pushing for your disqualification. 3 academic judges resisting. Final decision tomorrow morning. Whatever happens, save your evidence. This is bigger than the competition now. Simultaneously, Tanya received an email from Atlantic Airways legal department. The subject line read, "Settlement offer, confidential." The message contained a proposed settlement of $250,000 for Zara's inconvenience on Flight 1619, contingent upon signing a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent her from discussing the incident publicly. The offer also included a career development package with mentorship opportunities at, of all places, TechNexus. They're trying to buy you, Tanya observed. And not just your silence about the flight. They want to control your research. Zara stared at the offer amount, more money than she had ever seen, and then at her project materials spread across the hotel room. 3 years of work documenting algorithmic bias, inspired by her father's death, and driven by her desire to create more equitable technology. What would happen if I took it? She asked quietly. Tanya considered the question carefully, respecting her daughter's agency. Financially, we'd be comfortable. Your college expenses would be covered beyond your scholarship. But your research would effectively belong to them, and the systemic issues would remain unexposed. The decision crystallized for Zara in that moment. They don't want to pay me for my silence, she realized. They want to pay me for my complicity. As midnight approached, the corporate machine continued its work. Social media bots amplified false narratives about Zara's character. Anonymous sources fed journalists misleading information about the flight incident. Competition officials prepared paperwork for potential disqualification. But in room 1619 of the San Francisco Marriott, the room number a coincidental echo of her fateful flight, Zara Washington and her mother were preparing a counter-strategy that would shake the foundations of corporate America's approach to discrimination claims. They think this is about one bag and one trash can on one flight, Tanya said as they finalized their plan. We're about to show them it's about an entire system that treats people like garbage. Is corporate America's strategy of deny, discredit, delay still effective in the age of social media and widespread documentation? Comment number 1. If you believe corporations still hold too much power to control narratives. Comment number 2. If you think individual voices now have more ability to challenge powerful interests. Either way, hit that like button and subscribe to see how Zara turns the tables on these corporate giants. How will she use her technological skills to expose the truth? Will the competition judges stand for integrity or bow to corporate pressure? The battle is just heating up. The morning of the final competition day dawned with a tension that seemed to electrify the air itself. For Zara Washington, The stakes had escalated far beyond winning a technology competition. Today would determine whether corporate power could successfully silence both her discrimination claim and her research findings. Arriving at the Innovation Center an hour early, Zara found a small group of supporters waiting outside. Several young competitors led by Priya Patel wore handmade badges reading "Tech Ethics Matter" and "I Stand with Zara." "We saw what they're doing to you," Priya explained. "The ethics review, the relocation of your project, the special tech nexus, presentation time to undermine your research. It's not right." Zara was touched by the unexpected alliance but concerned for her new friends. "They might target you too," she warned. "Let them," replied another student, a young Latino programmer named Carlos. "My sister's facial recognition got her locked out of her own banking app for suspicious activity last month. Your research matters." Inside the venue, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically from previous days. Security presence had doubled, with guards positioned strategically throughout the exhibition hall. Competition officials moved in tight clusters, speaking in hushed tones while glancing toward Zara's project station. At her reassigned table in the corner, Zara calmly arranged her presentation materials. Overnight, she and her mother had made several crucial modifications to their strategy, anticipating the corporate counterattack would intensify today. At precisely 9 a.m., Dr. Lawrence Chen approached her table with a serious expression, accompanied by Veronica Mills and two men in suits. "Ms. Washington," Dr. Chen began formally, "the Ethics Committee has completed its preliminary review of the complaint against your project." Zara maintained perfect composure, exactly as practiced with her mother. "And their findings?" "The committee has identified potential concerns regarding your data collection methodology and privacy implications," Veronica Mills interjected before Dr. Chen could continue. "As such, while you may present your project today, you will be ineligible for judging or awards." One of the suited men stepped forward. "Additionally, we must ask that you modify your presentation to remove any comparative analysis of existing facial recognition systems, particularly named commercial systems." Zara recognized the legal threat immediately. They were demanding she remove all specific references to TechNexus's flawed algorithms. "May I see the specific ethics violations in writing?" Zara requested calmly. The three officials exchanged uncomfortable glances. "The committee's detailed findings will be available after the competition concludes," Veronica stated. "Convenient timing," Zara observed. "And the composition of this ethics committee?" "I'd like to know who evaluated my methodology." "That information is confidential to protect the integrity of the review process," replied the second suited man, who had not introduced himself. Dr. Chen, looking increasingly uncomfortable, finally spoke again. "The first presentation round begins in 30 minutes. Please make the required modifications to your materials by then." As they walked away, Zara immediately texted her mother. They made their move, proceeding with Plan B. Plan B was already in motion. While Zara had been engaging the competition officials, Tanya Washington was meeting with Dr. Eliza Chen at a cafe across the street. Despite being the competition director's sister, Dr. Chen had agreed to provide critical information about the behind-the-scenes manipulation. "The ethics committee doesn't even exist," Dr. Eliza revealed, sliding a set folder across the table. "This review was conducted by two TechNexus attorneys and Veronica Mills, who previously worked for Atlantic Airways' Corporate Communications Department. The folder contained internal emails documenting the hasty creation of an ethics review process specifically targeted at Zara's project, along with talking points for how officials should handle potential media questions about her disqualification. They're planning to announce your daughter's disqualification during the awards ceremony," Dr. Eliza continued. "The narrative will be that her methodology was flawed and potentially unethical, undermining both her research findings and, by extension, her credibility regarding the flight incident." Tanya's expression remained calm, but her eyes flashed with determination. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. This is exactly what we needed." Back at the competition, Zara faced her first scheduled presentation slot with the judges, minus Daniel Peterson. From TechNexus, who had been replaced by another corporate representative claiming scheduling conflicts. As Zara began her presentation, she noticed several audience members positioning themselves to record her. Rather than the modifications the officials had demanded, she launched into her original presentation with one significant addition. My research began 3 years ago, following my father's death during a police encounter where body cam footage failed to clearly capture his compliance with officer instructions. She began, immediately establishing the personal stakes behind her technical work. The judges shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting this opening. The audience, which had been growing steadily as word spread about potential controversy, fell completely silent. Facial recognition and image processing algorithms impact lives every day, from airport security to police surveillance, from banking access to employment screening, Zara continued, her voice steady and authoritative despite her 17 years. When these systems fail disproportionately for certain demographic groups, the consequences aren't merely technical, they're deeply human. For the next 15 minutes, Zara delivered a masterclass in technical communication, breaking down complex algorithmic concepts into accessible explanations while demonstrating the measurable bias in current systems. Using her live testing data from the previous day's attendees, she showed how the error rates correlated directly with skin tone. The most concerning aspect isn't just that these biases exist, she explained, displaying her data visualizations, but that they're being actively deployed in critical systems without transparency about their limitations. When she concluded her technical presentation, the audience erupted in applause, louder and more sustained than for any previous presenter. The academic judges looked genuinely impressed, while the corporate representative appeared increasingly uncomfortable. As the applause finally quieted, Zara delivered her final statement. Yesterday, TechNexus presented their facial recognition system in this very venue, claiming 99.7% accuracy. My research demonstrates that this accuracy applies primarily to white male faces while the error rate for women of color approaches 35%. These are not opinions or allegations. They are mathematically verifiable facts. The corporate representative immediately stood. This presentation violates the ethics committee's directives. I must ask that it be terminated immediately. Before competition officials could respond, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Bradley Cooper himself had arrived, flanked by security personnel. His face flushed with anger as he strode toward Zara's presentation area. "This is defamatory. Corporate espionage," he announced loudly. "Ms. Washington is making false claims about proprietary technology she has no access to." Zara, prepared for this moment, responded with perfect calm. "Mr. Cooper, we met on Atlantic Airways Flight 1619, where you accused me of stealing your wallet before finding it in your own jacket pocket. Your company's facial recognition system is being deployed in airports nationwide, potentially subjecting millions of travelers to the same kind of baseless suspicion I experienced on that flight." The audience gasped at the direct connection between the viral video incident and the technology being discussed. Bradley's face darkened further. "Your so-called research is methodologically flawed," he countered. "You're a high school student, playing with concepts you barely understand." "Then you should have no objection to a live demonstration," Zara replied, gesturing to her testing station. "Your system versus my bias correction algorithm, with this diverse audience as subjects." Bradley hesitated, clearly caught off guard by her confidence. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Checking the screen, his expression shifted from anger to concern. After a brief, intense conversation, he turned back to the room. "This presentation is over," he announced. "TechNexus is withdrawing from this competition effective immediately due to clear violations of scientific and ethical standards." As Bradley stormed out, trailed by his entourage and several competition officials, the remaining audience erupted in confused murmurs. Dr. Eliza Chen stepped forward from the sidelines and approached the microphone. "As a judge and computer science professor, I suggest we continue with Ms. Washington's demonstration. Scientific claims should be evaluated on their merits, not silenced through corporate pressure." What followed was unprecedented in the competition's history. For nearly 40 minutes, audience members voluntarily participated in Zara's comparison testing, with results displayed in real time on large screens. The data was undeniable. Current facial recognition systems, including the one being deployed in airports nationwide, showed significant accuracy disparities based on race and gender. Just as Zara was reaching the climax of her demonstration, the venue's technical systems suddenly failed. The screens went blank, the microphones cut out, and the lighting flickered ominously. "Technical difficulties," announced Veronica Mills through a backup system. "We'll need to temporarily suspend all presentations." The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. As competition staff scrambled to address the supposed technical issues, Zara calmly retrieved a backup laptop from her bag, one her mother had purchased that morning specifically for this contingency. "My algorithm can run on any standard system," she announced loudly enough for the entire room to hear. "If anyone would like to see the comparison continue, we can proceed without the venue's equipment." A circle formed around her table as Zara continued her demonstration using her own resources. What the competition officials didn't realize was that this apparent technical failure played directly into Zara and Tanya's strategy. While attention focused on the main presentation area, Tanya Washington was meeting in a private room with three unexpected allies: Rebecca Palmer, the fired Atlantic Airways flight attendant; Alicia Rodriguez, James Whitfield's ex-girlfriend; and a technology journalist who had been covering both the flight incident and the competition. "Everything is documented," Tanya explained, providing files containing internal Atlantic Airways, emails about the digital cleanup of discrimination complaints, training materials showing the coded language used to instruct flight attendants in discriminatory practices, communications between TechNexus and competition officials orchestrating Zara's disqualification, technical data confirming the bias in facial recognition systems being deployed in transportation hubs. The journalist reviewed the materials with widening eyes. "This is far bigger than one incident on one flight," she realized. "This is systematic." "Exactly," Tanya confirmed, "and we're ready to go public with all of it." Back in the exhibition hall, competition officials had finally restored the technical systems, but the damage was done. Word of Zara's backup demonstration had spread throughout the venue, with many attendees capturing video on their phones. The hashtag algorithmic justice was trending locally on social media, with clips of Zara's presentation being shared alongside the original flight incident video. As the afternoon progressed, competition organizers announced a schedule adjustment that would delay the final judging and award ceremony until the following day, a transparent attempt to buy time for damage control. Zara used this delay to make her boldest move yet. Rather than waiting for official judging, she set up a live stream through her social media accounts, broadcasting her full research findings to an audience far beyond the competition venue. "What began as a personal research project has revealed a troubling pattern," she explained to viewers around the world. "The same biases that led to my treatment on Atlantic Airways Flight 1619 are encoded into the technological systems being deployed to monitor travelers across the country." As her live stream gained viewers, eventually surpassing 50,000 concurrent watchers, Zara methodically connected the dots between her personal experience and the broader systemic issues. How facial recognition systems with racial bias were being implemented in transportation security. How corporations used coded language to train staff in discriminatory practices while maintaining plausible deniability. How the same companies attempted to silence research exposing these problems. "This isn't just about one flight attendant or one airline," Zara concluded. "It's about recognizing how bias becomes encoded into our systems, both human and technological, and how those in power respond when these biases are exposed." By evening, competition officials announced the inevitable. The final judging and award ceremony would proceed the next day, but Zara Washington's project would remain under review and ineligible for consideration. What they didn't anticipate was that their decision had transformed Zara from competition participant to cause célèbre. As she left the venue that evening, dozens of fellow competitors and attendees formed an impromptu honor guard, applauding her courage. Several judges had privately expressed their disgust with the proceedings, with 2 publicly resigning from the panel in protest. That night, in their hotel room, Zara and Tanya watched as the story exploded across national media. The technology journalist Tanya had met with had published her first article, titled "Algorithm of Discrimination: How One Flight Revealed Corporate America's Biased Systems." Major networks were picking up both the flight incident and the competition controversy, framing them as interconnected examples of systemic discrimination. "They tried to make this about your credibility," Tanya observed, scrolling through the coverage on her tablet. "Instead, they've undermined their own." Zara nodded, exhausted but resolute. "What happens tomorrow?" Tanya smiled with the confident determination that had made her one of America's most feared civil rights attorneys. "Tomorrow they learn why you never throw away a Washington's property." The morning news cycle brought the corporate counterattack Tanya had anticipated. Atlantic Airways had filed a defamation lawsuit against Zara and Tanya Washington, claiming irreparable damage to the company's reputation based on misleading and manipulated social media content. "They're trying to intimidate us with legal costs," Tanya explained as they reviewed the lawsuit over breakfast. "Standard corporate tactic when facing a discrimination claim they can't easily dismiss." Zara studied the legal document with remarkable composure for a teenager facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. "They're claiming the video was edited to remove context, showing James Whitfield's actions were justified by my behavior. Which is why we have the unedited version with timestamps, plus witness statements," Tanya replied. "They're counting on the public not understanding the difference between filing a lawsuit and winning one." The media landscape had indeed split along predictable lines. Conservative outlets emphasized Atlantic Airways' claims about Zara's disruptive behavior, while progressive publications highlighted the racial dynamics of the incident. Social media was similarly divided, with Stand With Zara trending alongside Entitled Generation. What neither Atlantic Airways nor TechNexus had anticipated was Tanya Washington's preparedness for exactly this scenario. Before the corporations could control the narrative through their lawsuit, Tanya held an impromptu press conference on the steps of San Francisco's Federal Building. "Atlantic Airways has chosen to respond to documented discrimination by attacking the victim," she told the assembled reporters. "This morning we are filing our own lawsuit, not just for the mistreatment of my daughter, but on behalf of all passengers who have experienced similar discrimination on their flights." Cameras flashed as Tanya revealed the class action lawsuit she had been preparing since the incident occurred. "Through the courage of current and former Atlantic Airways employees, we have obtained evidence of systematic discriminatory practices, including training materials that instruct staff in techniques to manage passenger comfort through selective enforcement of policies based on passengers' perceived status and race." The class action filing transformed the legal battlefield. What Atlantic Airways had intended as an intimidation tactic now appeared defensive and retaliatory. By mid-afternoon, 3 additional plaintiffs had come forward with similar experiences on Atlantic flights, including a prominent black cardiologist who had been downgraded from first class despite his platinum status with the airline. As the legal maneuvering intensified, an unexpected ally emerged for Zara and Tanya. James Whitfield's ex-girlfriend, Alicia Rodriguez, had decided to go public with her knowledge of Atlantic Airways' discriminatory practices. In a lengthy interview with a national news program, she detailed how flight attendants received bonuses for passenger comfort management that often involved appeasing wealthy white passengers at the expense of travelers of color. "There was an unspoken understanding," Alicia explained on camera. "When certain passengers expressed discomfort about sitting near or being served alongside passengers who looked different from them, we were expected to resolve the situation by relocating or downgrading the minority passengers, never the complainants." The interview sent shockwaves through the airline industry. Atlantic Airways' stock price dropped 12% in a single day, as investors worried about both reputational damage and potential legal liability. Other airlines rushed to distance themselves from similar practices, issuing statements about their commitment to equal treatment of all passengers. For TechNexus, the situation was equally dire. Government agencies that had contracted for their facial recognition technology were now facing questions about potential bias in security systems. Bradley Cooper's company had issued a statement calling Zara's research methodologically flawed and scientifically insignificant, but technology experts were increasingly validating her findings. The Washington algorithm, as Zara's bias correction method had been dubbed by tech media, was being discussed in university computer science departments and corporate research labs. Several prominent AI ethicists had reviewed her methodology and publicly praised its innovation and rigor, particularly remarkable coming from a high school student. Back in the legal arena, Atlantic Airways was discovering that Zara Washington's reputation as a formidable opponent was well earned. Her legal team had filed motions to preserve all internal communications related to discrimination complaints, employee training, and the specific handling of the Flight 1619 incident. The airline's attempt to limit discovery was firmly rejected by the judge assigned to the case. "They're panicking," Tanya told Zara as they reviewed case developments that evening. "Their internal communications will reveal not just how they handled your incident, but their entire approach to discrimination, complaints." The corporate attempt to silence Rebecca Palmer had also backfired spectacularly. After being fired for confidentiality violations, Rebecca had filed a whistleblower protection claim with the Department of Labor. Her detailed testimony about Atlantic Airways' handling of discrimination complaints had triggered a federal investigation into potential civil rights violations by the airline. The patterns described by Ms. Palmer suggest systematic discrimination that may violate federal transportation regulations, announced a Department of Transportation spokesperson. "We take these allegations very seriously and are conducting a thorough review of Atlantic Airways' compliance history." For Zara, watching these developments unfold was both empowering and overwhelming. Her personal experience had sparked what was becoming a national conversation about both interpersonal and algorithmic discrimination. Technology publications were running in-depth analyses of her research, while social justice organizations were using her flight experience to highlight the everyday indignities faced by people of color in transportation settings. "I never expected all of this," she admitted to her mother as they prepared for another day of legal meetings. "I just wanted to be treated with basic respect." "That's how change happens," Tanya replied. "One person refuses to accept injustice, then another, then another. Suddenly, what seemed normal becomes unacceptable." The corporate response grew increasingly desperate as the legal and public relations disaster expanded. Atlantic Airways. CEO Richard Thornton, who had initially remained silent, finally issued a statement announcing an independent review of the airline's training practices and customer service policies. "While we cannot comment on specific allegations due to pending litigation," the statement read, "Atlantic Airways is committed to providing a welcoming environment for all passengers and takes any concerns about discriminatory treatment extremely seriously." The carefully worded non-apology did little to stem the tide of negative attention. Former employees began sharing their own stories of problematic practices at the airline, while passengers flooded social media with accounts of similar experiences on Atlantic flights. TechNexus was facing its own crisis as shareholders demanded answers about potential bias in their facial recognition products. Government contracts worth millions were now under review, with several agencies pausing implementation pending further testing of the system's accuracy across demographic groups. Bradley Cooper's attempt to discredit Zara's research had failed spectacularly when independent technologists reproduced her results, confirming the racial bias in TechNexus's algorithms. A leaked internal email revealed Cooper instructing his team to find any methodological flaws in Zara's work and emphasize her lack of credentials rather than addressing the substantive findings. The most dramatic development came 7 days after the initial incident, when an anonymous source provided Tanya's legal team with a recording of a conference call between Atlantic Airways executives and their crisis management team. In the recording, an executive could be heard saying, "The Washington situation needs to disappear. Whatever it costs, make it go away before the DOT gets involved." This explicit attempt to cover up discrimination rather than address it transformed public perception of the case. What might have been dismissed by some as an isolated incident involving one problematic employee was now clearly part of a corporate culture that prioritized denial over accountability. As the legal proceedings advanced, Atlantic Airways made one final attempt to silence the Washingtons with a settlement offer that had doubled to $500,000, still contingent on a strict confidentiality agreement. Tanya didn't even dignify it with a response. Meanwhile, James Whitfield had disappeared from public view, placed on administrative leave by the airline. His social media accounts were deleted, and he refused all interview requests. Atlantic Airways was clearly positioning him as a rogue employee whose actions didn't reflect company policy, a strategy undermined by the growing evidence of systematic problems within the airline. For Zara, the most meaningful development came not from the legal battlefield, but from her peers in the technology community. Despite being officially disqualified from the competition, she received the inaugural Ethical Innovation Award, created spontaneously by fellow competitors and endorsed by several of the academic judges who had resigned in protest. The award ceremony, held in a hotel ballroom the evening after the official competition concluded, drew more attendees than the main event. As Zara accepted the recognition from her peers, she spoke not about her personal vindication, but about the larger issues her experience had illuminated. Technology isn't neutral, she told the audience of young innovators. It reflects the biases of its creators, the limitations of its training data, and the power structures it's designed to serve. When we recognize that, we can begin to build systems that truly work for everyone, not just those who have traditionally held power. As Zara's speech circulated online, reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers, Atlantic Airways executives received alarming news from their legal team. The FBI had opened an investigation into potential civil rights violations and corporate conspiracy based on the evidence emerging from the Washington case. This has escalated beyond a civil matter, Tanya explained to Zara when she learned of the federal investigation. They're looking at potential criminal charges for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to violate civil rights. The final blow to Atlantic Airways' defense came when James Whitfield, facing potential criminal liability and abandoned by his corporate employers, decided to save himself by cooperating with investigators. Through his attorney, he offered to testify about the airline's discriminatory practices in exchange for immunity from prosecution. He's going to confirm everything Rebecca and Alicia told us, Tanya informed Zara as they prepared for court. And he has documentation, training materials, emails, performance reviews that rewarded him for exactly the behavior he displayed toward you. On the eve of what promised to be an explosive courtroom confrontation, Bradley Cooper made one last, desperate attempt to salvage his company's reputation and contracts. He requested a private meeting with the Washingtons, offering not just financial compensation, but a role for Zara in reforming TechNexus's algorithms. He wants to co-opt your research, Tanya observed. Use you as a shield against accusations of bias while continuing to deploy flawed systems. Zara considered the offer thoughtfully. What if we counter with our own terms? Full transparency of their datasets, independent auditing of their algorithms, and retroactive compensation for anyone harmed by false identifications. Tanya smiled with pride at her daughter's strategic thinking. Now you're negotiating like a Washington. As they prepared their counteroffer, news broke that would render negotiation unnecessary. A technical whistleblower from within TechNexus had provided evidence that the company had knowingly deployed facial recognition systems with documented accuracy disparities, concealing internal testing data that confirmed exactly what Zara's research had demonstrated. With both Atlantic Airways and TechNexus now facing federal investigations alongside civil litigation, the legal battle had transcended the individual incident on Flight 1619. What had begun with one flight attendant throwing a black teenager's bag in the trash had exposed interconnected systems of discrimination across multiple industries. For Zara Washington, standing on the courthouse steps beside her mother the next morning, the journey from victim to catalyst was complete. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions as they prepared to enter the building for what promised to be a landmark hearing. "Are you nervous?" Tanya asked quietly, straightening her daughter's blazer. Zara took a deep breath, thinking of her father, of all the people who had faced similar discrimination without the platform or resources to fight back, of the systems that needed to change. "No," she replied with quiet confidence. "I'm ready." The federal courthouse in San Francisco fell silent as Zara Washington took the witness stand. At 17, she was remarkably composed under the harsh fluorescent lights and scrutinizing gazes of attorneys, journalists, and spectators who packed the courtroom. Judge Eleanor Martinez, known for her no-nonsense approach to civil rights cases, nodded for Zara to begin her testimony. "Please describe, in your own words, what occurred on Atlantic Airways Flight 1619, the judge instructed. For the next 45 minutes, Zara recounted her experience with extraordinary precision. From the lost reservation and reassignment to the back of the plane, through Bradley Cooper's false accusation to James Whitfield's escalating hostility, culminating in throwing her Louis Vuitton bag in the trash. Did you understand Mr. Whitfield's statement that dirty things belong with dirty people to have racial implications?" asked Catherine Rodriguez, the lead attorney on the Washington's legal team. "Objection? Calls for speculation," interjected Atlantic Airways counsel. "Overruled," Judge Martinez responded firmly. "The witness may answer regarding her perception of the statement directed at her." Zara maintained perfect composure. "In context, with Mr. Whitfield's prior treatment of me compared to white passengers, the implication was clear. He wasn't referring to the physical condition of my bag, which was new and pristine. He was referring to me, to what he perceived as my place in the social hierarchy." As Zara's testimony continued, the courtroom witnessed a masterclass in articulate dignity. She never raised her voice or displayed anger, yet her clear recounting of events left many spectators visibly moved. When Atlantic Airways' attorney attempted to characterize her as oversensitive during cross-examination, Zara's response silenced the courtroom. "Sir, I've been taught since childhood to expect and tolerate a certain level of mistreatment based on my appearance. What happened on Flight 1619 exceeded even those adjusted expectations. This wasn't about sensitivity, it was about human dignity." The defense strategy crumbled further when Rebecca Palmer took the stand. Despite visible nervousness, the former flight attendant provided damning testimony about Atlantic Airways' unofficial policies. "We were trained to prioritize the comfort of certain passengers, even when that meant treating others as less valuable," she explained. "It was never explicitly stated in racial terms, but the patterns were unmistakable in practice." When Rebecca described how she had retrieved Zara's bag from the trash against James Whitfield's instructions, several jurors visibly reacted. Her subsequent termination for speaking out only reinforced the image of a corporation more concerned with concealing discrimination than addressing it. The most dramatic moment came during James Whitfield's testimony. Initially defiant, claiming he had followed standard procedures for disruptive passengers, his composure cracked when confronted with his own performance reviews. Documents showing he had received commendations for effectively managing cabin dynamics in situations involving minority passengers in premium cabins. "These reviews praise you for exactly the behavior Ms. Washington experienced," Catherine Rodriguez pointed out. "Was throwing a passenger's personal property in the trash part of your training?" James's face flushed. "Not explicitly, no. But creating pretexts to downgrade or inconvenience certain passengers was encouraged." After a long pause, James's shoulders slumped. There was an understanding about passenger compatibility. Executive-level management made it clear that certain demographics were considered premium cabin appropriate, and others needed to be managed to maintain the airline's desired atmosphere. "And who communicated these expectations to you?" James hesitated, then named several senior executives, including individuals who had publicly denied any discriminatory policies. The courtroom erupted at this direct contradiction of previous testimony. Judge Martinez called for order as Atlantic Airways attorneys huddled in panicked consultation. During a recess, Tanya received an urgent message. "The Department of Justice had expanded its investigation to include potential perjury charges against Atlantic Airways executives who had testified under oath about the company's policies. When court resumed, Bradley Cooper took the stand as a witness regarding his role in the Flight 1619 incident. His testimony quickly veered into disaster when Tanya Washington herself conducted the cross-examination. "Mr. Cooper, you stated earlier that you had no recollection of making derogatory comments about affirmative action during the flight. Are you aware that 3 passengers seated nearby have provided sworn statements confirming Ms. Washington's account of your comments?" Cooper shifted uncomfortably. People misremember conversations. "Perhaps. Let's discuss something more concrete. Your company, TechNexus, has a government contract to implement facial recognition systems at 12 major airports, correct?" "Objection. Relevance," Atlantic Airways counsel interjected. "I'll allow it," Judge Martinez ruled. "The witness's role in related industries may establish context for his actions during the incident." Tanya continued with surgical precision. "Mr. Cooper, internal TechNexus emails show you were aware of accuracy disparities in your facial recognition systems based on race and gender as early as 18 months ago. Is that correct?" Cooper's face paled. "Those were preliminary findings that required further study. Yet you continued deployment while concealing these findings from government agencies. Simultaneously, when seated next to a young black woman whose research directly addressed these disparities, you created a hostile environment that culminated in her humiliation. Do you see any connection between these behaviors?" Before Cooper could respond, his attorney intervened, requesting a brief consultation. When they returned, Cooper's entire demeanor had changed. "On advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment, right against self-incrimination," he stated flatly. The courtroom buzzed with shocked murmurs. A CEO of a major technology company taking the fifth in what had begun as a civil discrimination case signaled that criminal implications were now in play. As the trial progressed, Atlantic Airways' legal strategy collapsed entirely when their own internal communications were entered into evidence. Emails between executives revealed explicit discussions about passenger demographic management and strategies to handle complaints from minority customers without addressing underlying issues. Most damning was a memo following a previous discrimination complaint that instructed staff to document passenger non-compliance thoroughly to create defensible justification for any differential treatment that might be perceived as discriminatory. On the trial's 4th day, Atlantic Airways CEO Richard Thornton announced his resignation to pursue other opportunities, a transparent attempt to distance himself from the unfolding scandal. By day 5, the airline's legal team approached Tanya Washington about settlement discussions. "They're offering $5 million plus comprehensive policy changes," Tanya informed Zara during a private conference. "Non-disclosure is off the table. They know that ship has sailed." Zara considered the offer thoughtfully. "What about the other passengers who experienced discrimination and the employees who were trained to implement these policies?" "That's my daughter," Tanya smiled proudly. "We'll counter with a demand for a victim compensation fund and whistleblower protections." The final settlement, announced 2 weeks after the trial began, was unprecedented in scope. Atlantic Airways agreed to 1. Establish a $25 million fund for passengers who had experienced discriminatory treatment. 2. Implement comprehensive anti-bias training for all staff, designed by civil rights experts. 3. Create an independent oversight committee to monitor compliance. 4. Revise all training materials and eliminate coded language about passenger management. 5. Reinstate employees terminated for reporting discrimination, with back pay. 6. Pay substantial damages to Zara Washington, without confidentiality requirements. The impact extended far beyond Atlantic Airways. The Department of Transportation launched industry-wide investigations into discriminatory practices at other airlines. Congress scheduled hearings on racial bias in commercial transportation, with Tanya Washington invited as a key witness. For TechNexus, the fallout was equally severe. The company faced multiple federal investigations into both their discriminatory algorithms and potential fraud in government contracting. Bradley Cooper was forced to resign as CEO, and the company's stock value plummeted. Most significantly for Zara, her research on algorithmic bias correction gained national recognition. Several leading technology companies reached out about implementing her methodology, and 3 major universities offered research partnerships despite her youth. The National Science Foundation announced a new grant program specifically for research on eliminating bias in artificial intelligence systems, informally known as the Washington Initiative. Rebecca Palmer and other whistleblowers formed an industry accountability group called Aviation Equality to support employees reporting discrimination. As the legal battles concluded, Zara returned to her high school in Chicago to complete her senior year before heading to Yale. Her experience had transformed her from a promising student into a recognized voice for technological ethics and racial justice. At a small ceremony at the Chicago Urban League, Zara was honored for her courage in confronting discrimination. As she accepted the award, she reflected on the journey that had begun with a single act of discrimination on a flight to San Francisco. When James Whitfield threw my bag in the trash, he wasn't just discarding my property. He was attempting to discard my dignity, my humanity, my right to equal treatment, she told the audience. What he didn't understand was that dignity isn't something others can take from you. It's something you claim by refusing to accept injustice, not just for yourself, but for everyone. The Louis Vuitton bag that had precipitated the confrontation now held a place of honor in a traveling exhibition on everyday objects connected to civil rights history. Alongside Rosa Parks's dress and John Lewis's backpack from the Freedom Rides, Zara's bag represented a new chapter in America's ongoing struggle for equality, one where both interpersonal and algorithmic bias were recognized as barriers to justice. 6 months after the initial incident, Atlantic Airways unveiled its reformed training program and policies, developed with input from civil rights organizations. The first group of flight attendants to complete the new training received their certificates from an unexpected presenter, Zara Washington, who had accepted the airline's invitation to address the class. What happened on Flight 1619 reflected systems larger than any individual, she told the trainees. Real change requires acknowledging those systems and actively working to dismantle them. Today marks an important step in that process. As she concluded her remarks, Zara noticed a familiar face in the audience. Rebecca Palmer, now reinstated and promoted to training supervisor. Their shared smile acknowledged the long journey from that fateful flight to this moment of transformation. On the first anniversary of the incident, Zara received an email from an unexpected source. A young black girl from Minnesota had faced similar discrimination on a different airline. Instead of remaining silent, she had recorded the interaction, cited the Washington case to the flight crew, and received an immediate apology and accommodation. "You showed me that speaking up matters," the girl wrote. "Thank you for making it easier for the rest of us." For Zara Washington, that message represented the true measure of success, not the legal victory or policy changes, but the knowledge that another young person had claimed her dignity by refusing to accept injustice. As she prepared for her freshman year at Yale, her algorithm for bias correction and facial recognition had been adopted by 3 major technology companies and was being implemented in government systems nationwide. The Washington algorithm, as it was now widely known, was ensuring that technology served justice rather than perpetuating inequality. In her dormitory room, Zara kept a small reminder of where her journey had begun, a luggage tag from Atlantic Airways Flight 1619. On difficult days, it reminded her that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't just legal victory, but transforming painful experiences into systemic change that lifts everyone. One person's refusal to accept injustice can change entire systems, Tanya had told her daughter. Never underestimate the power of standing your ground. Zara Washington had done exactly that, and in doing so, she had helped bend the long arc of the moral universe just a little more toward justice. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you had the courage to speak up? What would you have done in Zara's position? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that one person really can make a difference. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, dignity isn't given, it's claimed, one brave stand at a time. Zara Washington's journey teaches us that dignity isn't something others can take away. It's something we claim by refusing to accept injustice. Her experience reveals how discrimination operates at both individual and systemic levels, requiring documentation and strategic response rather than emotional reaction. The story demonstrates that corporate power, while formidable, isn't invincible when faced with documented truth and strategic advocacy. It shows the interconnectedness of discrimination across different sectors, from airline service to technology algorithms, and how bias becomes encoded in both human and automated systems. We learn that effective resistance to discrimination requires both personal courage and community support. Zara succeeded not just because of her own resilience, but because allies like Rebecca Palmer, Dr. Eliza Chen, and fellow competitors stood alongside her. Perhaps most importantly, the story illustrates how one person's refusal to accept mistreatment can catalyze broader change. By standing firm in her dignity and leveraging her mother's legal expertise, Zara transformed a humiliating incident into systemic reform that benefited countless others facing similar discrimination. Has discrimination ever made you feel powerless? Did Zara's strategic response change how you might handle similar situations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful accounts of people standing up against injustice. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs encouragement to speak their truth in difficult situations. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger, but documented strategic action that creates lasting change for everyone.